that they don't even know they're making. A mistake that's so critical, it significantly decreases your chances of ever having a career. And it's a question you don't even, for most people, it's a mistake they don't even know they're making. So I'm going to give you a second to think about it. I know you're coming here, you're all pumped up, you're all excited. I don't know the answer. All right, I will answer it in a moment. So first, a quick introduction to myself. My name is Cory. I was really fortunate to launch my career when I was in film school. Ridley Scott hired me to write Metropolis, and I got flown to London to work with Ridley. And I learned more working with Ridley Scott than I did in all of film school combined. Principally learned that most of what you are taught in film school is not true. When you talk to agents and managers, they'll tell you as hard it is to launch a career, it's even harder to sustain a career. About 80% of writers who get that break and sell a script or option a script or get that first writing job, about 80% of them are one and done or two and done. And I was really fortunate, and have been really fortunate, to sustain a career. I've written projects for Wolfgang Peterson and Julie Roberts' company and Working Title and all the studios for the most part. Done 19 for-hire studio projects. And I've done pretty much everything you do as a professional writer. I've sold specs. I've sold pitches. I've been hired to write original ideas that the studios came up with, but no script exists. I've been hired to do rewrites. I've been hired to do adaptations. And I've done some production rewrites where you're actually on set rewriting comedy or character or structure while they're actually making the movie. So, for better or worse, I have over 10 years experience what it's like to actually make a living as a writer in this town. I've also been teaching screenwriting for about 10 years. I teach at UCLA, professional program, extension programs. I do private workshops, and I'm a mentor for Film Independent, who does the Spirit Awards, and various other organizations. And I think it's important that you know that context, because a lot of what I'm going to tell you over the next hour and a half will directly contradict a lot of things you've been told by other people. And a lot of those other people are really smart and very articulate and have never had a career as a writer. And that doesn't mean that they're automatically wrong and I'm automatically right. You guys, at the end of this weekend, and as you continue your writing journey, you're going to make your own decisions about what's true for you and what's not true. I just think it's important that you have the context of who I am, so when I start to give you information, at least you can process it. So when you talk to agents and managers, they'll tell you the single biggest mistake that writers make when they're trying to break into business and they don't know they're making it is going out to the industry with material that's not strong enough. Every time you go anywhere in the industry and give someone a script, no matter what they tell you, that script gets covered. And most of you probably know what coverage is. Someone will do a report. I used to do coverage at a studio at Paramount. And I would read your script, and I would write up a couple sheet document. And the most important thing is I'm scoring out your writing. And the decision makers, the people who have the ability to change your life, the agents and managers who can represent you, and or the people who actually have the power to look up a checkbook and say, I'd like to buy that script, or I want to option that script, or I'd like to give you $200,000 to rewrite this. Those folks aren't going to read your script, they're going to read the coverage. And unless that coverage is great, you haven't helped yourself. And what most people don't realize is you've hurt yourself. It's like a credit score. Because there's so many people trying to break into business, so many people fighting to get the right people to read their scripts, that when you finally get your shot, if they can go into their computer system and see, oh yeah, you've submitted a script or two and it wasn't that good, why would they read your script when they got another script that's a blank slate? And a lot of people make the mistake that, well, I went to one or two production companies and they didn't like the script as much as I thought they would. Okay, so I've hurt myself there, but I haven't hurt myself everywhere else. No, the problem isn't localized, it's globalized. The coverage is shared through a database. So anytime you go to any production company, anyone else in the industry, when you try to go to them, can access that coverage. And agents and managers, a lot of them, will come to my classes and speak, and the rule is it's off the record, and so they're fairly candid, especially for agents and managers. And they'll say, yeah, one of the first things I want to know if someone's trying to get me to read their stuff is, have you submitted it anywhere around town? And if the answer is yes, I really generally don't know that I want to represent them. Because they have a track record, and it's probably a negative track record. It's like a credit score. Now let's put this in perspective for you guys, specifically for the Great American Pitch Fest. You guys probably know that tomorrow, it's extremely unlikely anyone's going to buy your pitch. And the reason is, back in the good old days, maybe 8, 9, 10 years ago, there was a lot more development money being spent. So I'm a production company, and a writer comes up to me, and I'm pretty confident this writer can't write a great script. Certainly can't write to the standard that I would need to get directors and stars attached. But they have one hell of a great idea. I might buy that pitch and give that writer perhaps a decent amount of money. And the Writers Guild of America would mandate that they get to write the first draft. But I know the draft's not going to be good. And I'm okay with that because I now own the idea. And now I'll go to another writer and I'll hire that writer to write a really good script. So I'm spending twice the money to end up with a good script. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. I mean, about 7 years ago, these writers sold a pitch to Disney for $1 million. And I was the guy who got the rewrite assignment. So Disney brought me in. They hadn't even finished writing the script. They'd sold the pitch. Disney brought me in and said, we love the concept, we love the title, and we hate everything else. So rewrite the script from scratch. So now they've spent $1 million with these people, and then they have to pay me. And if I don't get it right, they're going to have to hire somebody else. I mean, and that's a lot of money, and they don't want to do that anymore. They don't want to be in the development business, and money's tight. So now, if someone comes to them, and they know this writer is a great writer, who can write great scripts, and they have the right idea at the right time, who knows? You could catch lightning in a bottle. But if they know, if they're not confident this writer's a great writer, it doesn't matter how great the idea is, they're probably not going to buy it. Make sense? So you're out there pitching. How do they know if you're a great writer or not? Right? There's no like special tags that you say, I'm on the inside, it's cool, you can trust me. So basically the best thing that's going to happen, probably for you, is someone's going to make a connection with you and think, hey, you have a good energy, you might be someone who'd be fun to work with, or at least you wouldn't be too much of a pain in the ass like most writers are. You have the kind of ideas that seem to be in alignment with the kinds of things we're interested in doing. Here's my card, send me some scripts. So basically you've been invited to send them some scripts so that they or their person can evaluate your scripts to see if you're a great writer or not. Makes sense, right? And if they don't think you're a great writer, what's going to happen? Nothing. Yeah, nothing. So, most everyone who's walking around here at the Great American Pitch Fest is thinking, or at least hoping, that they're a great writer. Why else would you be here? And I am friends with people who've come to these kind of events, or run companies where they've sent lower level people to these kind of events. And I was having dinner a couple months ago with two such folks, and I was talking about this, and how many scripts do you look at? And one guy goes, oh, I know, because we keep a spreadsheet. And we have, over the last, I forget how many years, have asked for 76 scripts. 76 writers we have asked for scripts for. And the woman at the table said, well, we don't keep a spreadsheet, I don't know, but I think it's been around 100. So about 170 scripts, 170 writers, they've said, I like your idea, I like your energy. I'd like to, they don't say this, but what they're saying is, I'd like to know if you're a great writer or not. I'd like to know if you're at least good enough that you can work in this industry. Send me the scripts and we'll evaluate it. 170. Out of that 170, how many writers were invited in? How many writers were writing scripts good enough that the production company or the management company said, we are really generally interested in working with you? So they're looking for the needle in the haystack. How many needles are there? So out of 176, how many? One. Yes. One. That should give you pause. That should give you great pause. And sometimes I'll look at people get mad at me, and I'm like, I'm the messenger. I'm not a gatekeeper. I am not a gatekeeper. It's been a long time since I was a gatekeeper, when I was a reader. I know a lot of gatekeepers. I know a lot of agents and managers. I know that they tell me consistently that when we read scripts from folks who don't have a track record, folks who want to break into business, how many scripts are good enough for us to actually be able to get this writer possibly a career? It's less than 1%. Less than 1%. So that means that probably at least 99% of writers who are trying to break into business think their scripts are better than they are. Go out to the marketplace. Because when we write scripts, we want to have a sense of hope. We want to have a sense of confidence. We want to have a sense that this could be the script that could change our life. This script is good or can be good. And when we finish a script and we feel that way about it, well, we want to go out and take a shot. You know, life's a ticket. We don't have all the time in the world. And agents and managers will tell you this is the single biggest mistake that writers make. And most of these writers, because I've done consults with them, you know, their teachers have told them the script's great, their friends have told them the script is great, maybe even script consultants have told them the script is great, but the industry doesn't agree. Best thing anyone did for me when I was starting out is I was very insecure, and I was one of those bipolar insecure writers where some days I could be the next Shakespeare, and some days I'm the biggest hack in the world, and it was back and forth. And I wrote the script, and my instructor at UCLA said, this is one of the best scripts I have ever read. This script will sell. I will help you get an agent or manager. Keep that between you and me. That's how strong I feel about this. So that was, of course, I'm Shakespeare, or close to it. That was awesome. And I was in a writing group, and we prided ourselves on giving really honest feedback. And they read the script, and they had some notes, but all in all, they loved it. And they said, this script's going to sell. And I was interning for a manager. So I went to him as a favor to get him the first shot at this great script. And I said, would you be willing to read the script? And he said, sure, I'll read it over the weekend, we'll talk on Monday. I come in on Monday, and he says, I think you did a really solid job for a rough first draft. I think you don't want to go anywhere in your industry with this script because it will hurt you. If you're willing to work your ass off over multiple rewrites, I will teach you how to rewrite the script to get it to where it needs to be. And it was a really difficult, weird space for me. I'm like, well, did I tell you what my professor said? Did I tell you what these people said? And he was really nice about it. And he said, Cory, they believe what they said, but they don't know what it takes to get, they don't know the bar at the industry level. I do, because this is what I do. And I think he could tell I was still on the fence, and he said something that I'll forever be grateful for. He said, if you're willing to put a little money up, let's hire some readers. Let's hire actual studio readers, not these script consultants. And by the way, I do script competitions, I can put the target on my back. But the problem with script consultants, for the most part, is they're running a volume business. They want happy repeat customers. They tend to skew the feedback positive. He said, let's actually hire the people where if your script went out to the marketplace, they're the ones who actually write the coverage report. We'll pay them out, you'll pay them out of your pocket, and say, write the actual coverage report that you would write if this script came across. And if the coverage all comes back great, I'll go to the marketplace with the script. So I said, let's do it. I didn't have a lot of money, but I invested $400, which was a fortune. We got 3 readers. First coverage came back, more, and the other 2 coverages came back, And that was a real kick in the gut. And I spent the next 13 months rewriting the script with this manager, and it was a long, gruesome process, and I learned through that period all the things I thought I knew I didn't know, and all the things I needed to know that I didn't even know existed. And that script, when it went out to the marketplace, launched my career. And like literally 6 weeks later, I was meeting with agents at ICM and CAA and William Morris, and I was on a plane 2 months later to London to work with Ridley Scott. It was life-changing. And it never would have happened if that manager hadn't pushed me to get coverage. So I understand how easy it is to overvalue your scripts and have people tell you things about your scripts that you believe to be true. But the marketplace has a different opinion. And the marketplace is the only opinion that matters if you want to have a career. I've been holding you off for a while. What is it?
Yeah, I have a question. Out of 170 requested scripts, one was option or...
No, one script was good enough that they brought that writer in. The other 160, they were like, great idea for a pitch, but you can't write strong enough.
Okay.
No, the script was option. So let's quickly determine what is the bar, what is the standard. Because here's the good news, now that I've given all the bad news. The good news is, I just recently had lunch with this guy, Nick, who's a movie coming out. He's one of my students, and he wrote and directed a movie. It's testing through the roof, and he's now breaking as the new big director. And his complaint is, man, I keep reading all these scripts, and they're good, they're pretty good, but they're not great. and I'm not staking my career in a non-great script. Help me get a great script. What of your students should I be reading? I get calls from producers all the time. Who of your students should I be reading? There is a driving demand for people like you. Well, some of you might be working professional writers. I don't mean to suggest otherwise, but most of you probably are not. And for those of you looking to break in the business, there is a huge demand for people like you who can write great scripts. Because there's not enough great scripts, and you're cheap, and they can abuse you with free rewrites. So you are a hot demand. That's why you're seeing higher and higher caliber directors and producers come to these kind of events. You know, there are other events like this Great American Pitch Fest is the best. But still, if you talk to anyone candidly, they're going to tell you it's looking for a needle in a haystack. And so if you go back and look in previous rosters, you don't see necessarily the highest caliber agents and managers, but you're seeing more and more of them coming now. Because there's a real demand to find that needle. So what is the standard that you have to write to? How many of you have ever read scripts, read a bunch of scripts? Okay, great. How many of you have read a script where it's like, these are amazing characters. I'm just going to get on the stage now. Don't expect any magic tricks. How many of you have ever read a script where the characters are really engaging and compelling, and you really want to spend time with them, but the story's not that strong? The story's not strong enough to keep and hold your attention. Raise your hand if you ever had that experience. Great. And how many of you have had the opposite, where it's like, this is a great idea for a story, and the story really grabs and holds me, but the characters aren't strong enough to really hold my attention? Great. Those are all pretty good scripts. A great script is one that does both. It has characters that are compelling and you want to spend time with, and a compelling story that you want to spend time with, and the story gets more and more interesting. How many of you have read scripts where the story is interesting up to about page 35, 40, 45, 50, and then it flatlines? Right, so a really great script has really great characters, a really great story, and can go the distance. That's what everybody's looking for. And it's really rare. And if you can do it, I guarantee you'll get noticed. And I don't know a single writer who can write to that level who doesn't have a career, or at least doesn't get a shot at a career. We're seeing about 2 spec scripts sell a week. It's a lot more than a couple of years ago. Even better in TV. More and more development money, more and more original production. I'm seeing more and more students getting agents and managers and selling and optioning material. And they write to this level. So the good news is, everyone is obsessed with this question of how hard is it to break into business? And the answer is, well, it depends on what you're writing. If you're writing to this level, it's actually fairly easy to break into business. And if you're writing below it, it's basically impossible. And everyone who complains about the missing piece being access, the only reason I don't have a career is I can't get the right people to read my script. They're not writing to this level. They're writing below this level. And access isn't their problem, it's their excuse. Age is not the problem, it's an excuse. I have a 57-year-old student who just optioned 2 scripts, and she lives in South Africa, so not being in LA is an excuse, it's not the reason. But the problem is everyone thinks they're writing to this level, so if you think you're writing to this level and nothing's happening for you, you start to draw some reasonable conclusions, but it's all based on a faulty assumption. So the question here is, because I guarantee you, once you can write to this level, the people that you want to read your script are actually looking for you. Now, I'm not saying you just sit at home and put an ad out on Craigslist and it'll be good. You're going to have to get some access and network, and you're going to have to hustle. I'm not saying that doesn't exist. But it's going to be a downhill process, not an uphill process. And once someone in the industry reads a script at this level, it goes viral. It goes viral. And when someone reads a script that a writer thinks is at this level, but it's not, it's the sound of silence. So the question is, how come most writers can't write to this level? And if you can't write to this level, as 99% of writers can't, what can you do about it? And this is why there's such a huge failure rate, because people don't actually have very good answers to those questions. And the answers they have are false. And I'll explain later what the false answers are, which is a lot of writers think this is the path to writing to this level, and that path actually leads them to failure. So why can't people write to this level? The conventional answer is talent. And this is what I used to think, and it's what most teachers secretly think. And they'll share this with the teachers, they won't share it with their students, which is, just because you have a passion and a dream to be a professional writer doesn't necessarily mean you have the talent to be a professional writer. And if you have all the talent in the world but you don't work your ass off, you won't make it. But if you work your ass off and you don't have enough talent, you won't make it. So it's the intersection of talent and passion and dedication. So the best thing to do, and many teachers, this is their model, encourage people, because the more you write, the better you'll become, which is a fallacy. And that if you have it, the more you write, the quicker until you get there. And if you don't have it, the quicker you'll get to the point where you realize you don't have what it takes and you quit. And you'll find something else. And that's the best thing that a teacher can do for you. The only book that I make my students read, and I highly recommend it, is by Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K. And I'm going to email, for those of you who want to be on the email list, I'll email you a bunch of this information. But her name is Carol Dweck, D-W-E-C-K. And the book is Mindset, New Psychology of Success. She talks about the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. And moving from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset is the best gift you can give yourself as a writer. Mindset. And so what I came to realize is the way screenwriting is taught is unlike the way any other artistic endeavor is taught. If you go to Juilliard, you don't get to go on stage and act for 1 year. You learn the skill sets and you practice them in isolation until they become burned in your muscle memory. Then in the second year, we'll show you how to take those and make you into an actor or an actress. How many of you have done improv? Right, so I did Second City Improv. And it's about a year to year and a half of training individual exercises like yes and supporting your partner and space work, and practicing that over and over and over again until it becomes part of your muscle memory before you get on stage and perform. Because if I'm on stage performing improv and I'm thinking about the techniques that I have to use, I'm not improvising. But if I'm on stage and I'm free and I'm like, here's my partner, but I'm not using any of the techniques, it ain't improvising. So the techniques have to be there without me even thinking about it. And it takes about a year and a half to train the average person to become a competent improviser. So I decided, what if there were skill sets required to write at a professional level? What if they could be taught? What if writing could be taught the way improv is taught, or sculpture, or fencing, or acting at Juilliard? And so there was a writer's strike, and I had a lot of time on my hands, so I took a group of students from my UCLA class, and I said, hey, here's the proposition. Come work with me once a week for 1 year, and you cannot write a screenplay or a pilot. You got to put all your writing aside. We're going to be Juilliard. And we're going to do individual exercises designed to teach you the essential skill sets. And then after the year, I'll show you how to take those skill sets and then go back to your writing. And here's the kicker. I don't know if I can do this or not. It's going to be a lot of trial and error. And so 10 suckers said yes, one of them dropped out. So one dropped out, so there was 9. Of the 9, 4 are working writers right now. It's 45%. Film school, are getting about 2 to 3% success rate. It's not that I'm a better teacher than them, it's because I stumbled into the right paradigm. So what are the skill sets? The first skill set is writing in compelling conflict. You guys probably know conflict's really important, but you probably don't know what compelling conflict is. David Mamet wrote and it's on my website, corymendell.net. David Mamet wrote a memo to the letters. That's right. David Mamet wrote a memo to the writers of the unit, saying writing in compelling conflict is not a natural skill set. Can't read that. You will learn to do it, or you will not have a career. Neil Simon in his book talks about all the years that he wrote all these plays, and they were funny and had great characters, but they weren't good enough, and he knew they weren't good enough, but he didn't know why. How many of you have written stuff, and on some level you know it's not good enough, but you honestly don't know why it's not good enough? Raise your hand. That sucks. And that really sucks, man. And so he did the one thing he never wanted to do. He went to his big brother for help, because his big brother Danny was a successful writer. And he said, Danny, what the hell is going on? And Danny read his stuff, and he said, you schmuck, you don't write in compelling conflict. And Neil Simon said, yes, I do. Of course I do. Don't be an idiot. What is compelling conflict? And so Danny explained, this is what he says in his book. He says, Danny explained it to me, and suddenly I understood what was missing. And I understood that the way you write a play is you write out your conflicts and then fill in the words. And he's gone on to have a pretty good career. I've been fortunate to meet Aaron Sorkin a few times. We have the same age. And I've heard Aaron talk about, and all these writers are trying to break into business, like his metaphors of car. And they're so obsessed with what kind of car, the make and the model, and the color, and what's the dashboard look like, and the features. And he said, if you don't have an engine, what's the point? He says, I always start with an engine before anything else, because if I don't have an engine, I don't want to waste my time. And that engine is compelling conflict. Cup holders don't mean anything until you have an engine. So the point is, this is serious business, because I'll tell you, from my experience, about 5% of writers naturally write in compelling conflict, and 95% don't. So that means for those 95%, they can work their ass off, take classes, read books, be in a writing group, they're not going to make it. Now, let me tell you some things that are going on if you don't write in compelling conflict. I haven't read any of your writing, so I'm not indicting anyone. But statistically speaking, I'd be willing to make a large wager that a good number of you don't write in compelling conflict and don't know it. So let me tell you some things that are going on for you that you're not aware of. When I was starting out, this manager said, rewriting is essential, and you suck at rewriting. I said, well, thank you, give me some more good news. He said, most people suck at rewriting. I'm like, okay, that actually makes me feel a little bit better. And he said, here's what happens. People get a script, they give it to people they like and respect. They said, read this and give me feedback and be honest. Don't pull your punches. What did you like? What didn't you like? What's slow? What would you change? Give me notes. How many of you have done stuff like that? Right. And he said, that's a terrible way to rewrite. And I'm like, well, what else am I supposed to do? You know, ask my dog. My dog knows everything. And he's the golden retriever, you know. So anyway, he said, no, here's the thing, Cory. When you write a script, a movie plays in your head. You experience a movie. And when you give it to someone else, and a movie plays for them, and they experience a movie, and somebody else, movie plays for them, plays for them. And then when you sit down and get notes, you all make the assumption that it's kind of roughly the same movie. And so basically, it's akin to giving a script to someone when they get the wrong script and with the same characters and everything, and they give you notes on the wrong script. And now you're rewriting your script based on those notes. That's a recipe for disaster. And I remember thinking, that's interesting, but I don't really know what that means entirely. So he went through a process with me. And I'll tell you, I'll skip ahead of what I did at UCLA, which will really make the point. I became such a believer in this process that when I first started teaching at UCLA, I said, what's your name? Megan, what's your name? David, come in next week with 8 copies of your script. Megan, 8 of your script. Give me those 8 copies. Megan's 8 copies I give to David. David, I give to Megan. Megan here has 8 copies of David's script. Go to 8 of your friends. Ask them to read David's script. Let them know I didn't write the script. Someone in my class wrote the script. I don't know anything about him. Seems like a perfectly nice guy, but I don't know anything about him. I'm going to ask you a series of questions to see what movie plays in your head. Is that cool? And the friend's like, sure. So you record 8 conversations. Next week, you come back. You have 8 recordings from 8 people who don't know you, don't give a shit about you, who read your script, experienced movies. I want you to go home and I want you to transcribe those recordings. Because if you transcribe them, you really have to hear them. And I'm thinking, hey, this is my first year teaching, but Teacher of the Year award, here I come. 2 people called me threatening to kill themselves. They're serious. It was not funny at the time. They didn't kill themselves. They're both working writers today. They both said this was the moment their consciousness started, and they started to understand what it meant to be a writer and what was required to be a writer. One woman just disappeared. This is a very expensive program. She just disappeared for 6 weeks. People were devastated. When you spent so much time pouring your heart and soul into this script, and this is how you experience it, and you realize everybody else is experiencing it like this, and this is a joke compared to this. I went through that with my first script. It was the most painful experience I've ever had as a writer. And it makes you quickly ask the question, why? How come nobody's seen the movie that plays in my head? And the main reason is because you don't write in compelling conflict. That's one of the main reasons compelling conflict is so important. It creates context, actual context. Not the context that writers think. Most writers think context is what characters say about themselves. But what characters say about themselves only tells the reader one of two things. It tells them how this character wants other people to see them, or how this character wants to see themselves. We don't know anything about the character. So if you don't write a compelling conflict, I guarantee you no one's going to see the movie that plays in your head. And nobody sees a better movie. I do script consults with mostly professional writers, sometimes non-professional writers, and it's night and day, because with non-professional writers, I always start by saying, tell me about the movie that plays in your head. Why do you love this character? Why do you love this story? What are you excited about? What's going on here? Let's walk me through the movie you're experiencing. And when it's done, I'm always say the same thing. Wow. That was honestly and genuinely really fascinating, or really funny, or really scary, or really romantic. Too bad the reader doesn't see almost any of that. Now let me help you learn how to take what you're experiencing and translate it to a reader. If you don't write a compelling conflict, you can't do that. Here's another thing. How many of you find the middle scripts, second acts, especially the middle of the second act, hardest place? Raise your hand. And as a reader, isn't that usually where the script goes south? So this is really silly, but let's say that I was going to drive from here to San Diego and I had enough gas to go halfway. And I didn't know that. What's going to happen to me? I run out of gas in San Clemente. And when I go, sheesh, what happened? I'm such an unlucky driver. So the next day I go and I have enough gas to go and I end up in San Clemente. I'm like, whoa, what's going on with San Clemente? And the third time it happens, I go, no, okay, I'm not a moron. I know my problem. It's San Clemente. It's like an evil car halting town. If I just could go around San Clemente, so I take a 7-hour book, and it's like how to avoid San Clemente, or the journey that successful writers took to San Diego, and very formulaic. Leave at this time, eat this for breakfast, do this. And the good news is, if I follow them, guess what? I'm not stopping in San Clemente. I'll run out of gas in Dana Point. And because the problem isn't the middle of the journey. The problem is not enough gas. Compelling conflict's the gas. Compelling conflict creates and sustains narrative urgency and momentum. So if you don't write in compelling conflict, and you have great characters and great dialogue, and you have a great idea for a movie, and you can, as a script, there comes that point where you get the reader in the car or you don't. And obviously, you want them to get in the car and go on the journey with you, but then you got to keep them in the car. If you don't write a compelling conflict, you might be able to get a reader in the car, you won't keep them in the car. So there's a lot of bad things that happen for people that don't write a compelling conflict, and they don't know it. Until someone comes along and says, hey, schmuck, you're not writing a compelling conflict. And then the writer goes, what are you talking about? Of course I am. What is that thing? All right, so that's the first skill set, and it's teachable and it's learnable. You can learn how to write a compelling conflict. The second one is creative integration. So, I'm going to go back to my friend Nick, a student of mine, who directed the movie. Now, he's a broad comedy guy. You get bonus points if you can read my writing. So, Nick, he's a comedy guy, so he's getting all these comedy scripts, and he's like, they're funny, they got good set pieces, but the characters aren't strong enough. There's writers out there who can write good premise and good stories, but their characters feel sort of puppety. And they take classes and they read books and they get all this information to try to write better characters, and that makes it worse. And they often have a lot of shame. I work with a lot of these writers, like, I'm just not mature enough, or there's something wrong with me. I don't know. And it's like, it's terribly painful to love stories and build great ideas and have interesting things happen and not be able to have a career because your characters aren't resonant enough and they're one-dimensional, flat, and you don't know what to do about it. It's a terrible place. And there's other people out there that they wake out of bed writing the best characters and dialogue. They just warm up with amazing characters and dialogue. It just flows. But they can't build or sustain a strong story. And when people read their stuff, they're like, I loved your characters, I wasn't really sure what was going on. How many of you ever had someone say, loved your characters in writing, I really wasn't quite sure what was going on? Raise your hand. And how many of you had people said, loved your characters and your dialogue, but your story is not strong enough? Yeah. So, and they go to a bunch of classes, read a bunch of books, and they learn a lot of formulas. which actually just makes everything worse. So what I want to do is explain to you why there are a lot of people out there that can get close to a career without actually having a career, because they can really nail half of the equation but not the full equation. Story, character. There's two kinds of writing muscles. There's the conceptual and the intuitive. It comes from different hemispheres of the brain. Most writers are wired to be either conceptual or intuitive. So let's just really step back for a second and explain that. Conceptual writers work. The conceptual brain has a different processor than the intuitive brain. It has a sequential processor versus a parallel processor. Different tools, different value systems, and they can't talk to each other. It's like the old days of PC and Mac. They can't talk to each other. So the people who are more conceptual work outside in. They work from a more intellectual place. So when I'm working with a conceptual writer, when I work with any writer, I always say, what'd you start with? What got you excited? What was your initial premise? Why are you so gung-ho to write the script? And as a conceptual writer, what kind of things do I tend to hear? The premise, the what if, the world, the big idea, that plot twist, the ending, that's what you hear. And when I talk with intuitive writers, what do I hear? The character, the emotion. I don't know, something just came to me, and I woke up and I just had to write this thing. I didn't even know what it was, but how to write it. Conceptual writers work outside in, and they invent their characters. They design their characters. They are the gods of their characters, and that's why their characters feel like puppets. When I do script consults with conceptual writers, I'll read their script, and there'll be a lot of really interesting things happening in the script, but it's not interesting to me because I don't feel anything. And when I talk to the writer, it becomes really clear to me that they don't really feel anything. They're real smart, and they're really good at efficiency and clarity and escalations, and they're really good at pacing, and they're really good about having the right things trying to happen at the right time. We just don't care enough. Because they don't care enough. Because they work from a conceptual place. When you work with intuitive writers, they don't design their characters, they don't invent their characters, they discover them. So when Quentin Tarantino talks about, I just follow the characters around like a court reporter, writing down what they do, that's a very intuitive process. So as a writer, you sometimes get to a point where you're like, well, what would the character actually do in this situation? If you're an intuitive writer, you know what they would do because they're a real person. If you're a conceptual writer, you know what they'll do. They'll do whatever you need them to do to serve your beautiful plot. And the reader's just not going to go along with you. You know, the 3 commandments that Ernest Langdon said about writing is never bore the reader, never confuse the reader, and never have characters do or say things they wouldn't actually do or say just to serve a plot point. Conceptual writers violate the 3rd one. Intuitive writers violate the first 2 because intuitive writers have all of this great character and dialogue. They don't have conflict, they don't have structure, and we can't understand the process. We're not really sure what's going on. So conceptual writers and intuitive writers. And so what Nick is looking for is a writer who can write funny and smart with characters. He goes, I want the next Groundhog Day. That's my next movie. He's looking for a writer who's creatively integrated, who can integrate the conceptual and the intuitive and get the best of both worlds. That is the core of what I do when I work with writers, is creative integration. Because what most writers do is the opposite. When I started out, what I told people was, if you want to be a writer, you got to dive in and write. Keep writing. The more you write, the better you'll become. Here's a secret. It's not true. It actually makes things worse. It's the worst advice I ever gave anyone. Here's why. Okay. You're writing a script right now. How do you write a script right now? Great. And you're either writing that script hoping to sell it, hoping to get an agent or manager, or you have an agent and a manager and you're hoping that they'll get excited and go out to the marketplace, and you're hoping the marketplace will get excited. Or if you're way early on the journey, you're just hoping you can write a script and other people will say it doesn't suck too bad and that you have a shot at this. Raise your hand if some form of these objectives are in your head. Yeah, and that's a big problem. And here's why it's a big problem. If I'm writing a script that I want to be good, I'm writing a script that I want to have the best possible chances of success, I want to write the best possible script. That's a no-brainer. Unless I have certain strengths as a writer, and I have certain weaknesses as a writer. How should I approach writing the script? I should write to my strengths and hide my weaknesses, right? Because no, I should. Because if I don't, I won't write my best script. And I want to write the script. If I'm writing a script right now that I'm going to turn in the studio that hired me, you better believe I'm going to write to my strengths and try to hide my weaknesses. You better damn believe I'm going to do that, because that's going to give me the best possible script that I could write. But if I keep doing that over time, what happens to my strengths? What happens to my strengths? They get stronger. What happens to my weaknesses?
Your weaknesses stay weaknesses.
No, they get weaker.
Yeah.
So before creative integration, when writers jump in and they keep writing, if they're conceptualists, their conceptual side is going to get stronger and stronger, their intuitive side is going to get weaker and weaker. And with intuitive, it's the opposite. That's why Juilliard makes you sign a piece of paper saying you're not going to act for 1 year. That's why Second City doesn't let you get up and act or improvise for a year. That's why fencing academies don't let you pick up a sword for a year. Because if you were to engage in the activity, you're just going to make your natural strength stronger and your natural weaknesses weaker. And writing a script to get success is a fixed mindset approach. A growth mindset approach is, I'm going to make an investment. I want to hide my strengths and write to my weaknesses. And of course, the fixed mindset says, don't do that, because what you end up with won't be very good. And the growth mindset says, so what? It's about a process and a journey. It's about, I want to become, here's what I know. When I'm the kind of writer who can write both really great stories and really great characters, I'm going to have my best possible shot. And until I can do that, I might not have a shot. So I'm going to divide my writing life into 2 stages, writer development and then writer marketing. And I'm not going to go out to the industry until I know that I'm at this level. And so what this means, and it's hard for some of my students, it's so hard to turn off the fixed mindset. But when I work with people, what I say is, so this is your strength. Great, we're going to tie it behind your back, and you're going to have to work from your weakness. For how long? Until I say. And what creative integration is you have to become equally strong both ways. And you also have to value balance. You have to get to a point where you value both processes equally. Then comes the hard part, integrating the two, putting them back together. And when you can do that, your writing will explode. I can't guarantee you'll have a career. It still helps to be in the right place at the right time with the right idea. But here's what I do know. When you can write to this level, and you're out there and someone says, I want to see your script, that's going to be good news because they're going to get blown away. And if your script goes somewhere and the coverage comes back and they're like, it really isn't for us, we have a different kind of project, my partner, but you're going to go in the database as, this is a writer to keep in touch with. This is a writer to write. And that's how you get a career. You don't get a career selling a script. Well, you can get a career selling a script, but most working writers started not selling a script, but getting people blown away by a script. Okay, so compelling conflict, creative integration. The other key skill set is rewriting, and we've already talked about that. It's, here's a river that there's a factory dumping toxins, and there's a village where everyone's getting sick. So the doctors rush in and keep treating the kids. It's not going to do anything. The problem isn't the kid, it's a symptom, it's a consequence. The problem is the factory. Until you take that factory offline, you're going to keep having sick kids. Most people rewrite, spending their entire time rewriting sick kids. Bringing in medicine to try to fix the kids. Everyone's chasing the downstream consequences. You got to understand the upstream problem. And you can't understand the upstream problem if you don't test your script, which is what movie is playing in other people's heads. What are they experiencing and why? Until you know that, all you're doing is chasing the consequences of the real problems, and you're not fixing your script. That's why most people, when they rewrite, they're chasing their tail, or it's a whack-a-mole game. If this manager hadn't taught me this, I'd be in this audience. I wouldn't be the idiot running around yelling at you on Saturday morning. The last one I want to talk about in my hieroglyphics, whatever that is organic story structure. Now, we're kind of at an interesting point right now in all of this. So, for a long time, too many writers were literally destroying their chances by following a formula. Now nobody calls it a formula, they call it a paradigm. They call it the universal story beats. And they say some pretty scary things, like all successful scripts do this. Or readers are trained to look for this. Or you can't break an industry unless you do this or you do that. And that makes a lot of writers go, I better write that way. And there are a lot of writers who actually, like, I don't know if I want to write that way, but I don't like the alternative, which is I just try to figure things out and I keep ending up with a 60-page script or a 70-page script. So, let's say that you just sold a script for a large amount of money and you're out having an amazing celebration and the money is no object, and you spend $3,000 on wine. And I'm assuming you don't naturally spend $3,000 on wine, and you're at home talking about this, and you're talking about how great the wine is, or I can't believe that was $3,000, it wasn't worth it. But here's what you're not talking about: the wine glass. And stay with me. This is actually esoteric but important. You're not talking about the wine glass, unless something went wrong with it. It broke in your gums. They served your $3,000 wine in Dixie cups. They said we're out of Dixie cups. They poured the wine all over you. They served it to you in a shot glass that was lipstick stained. You'd complain. So the point is, the wine glass it has an important function in the wine experience, right? But we take it for granted. As long as it's there and it does its job, we take it for granted, because we're there for the wine. The wine glass is story structure. And the wine is why you and I want to be writers. It's the characters, the dialogue, the emotion, the comedy, the life. And we don't notice story structure unless something's gone wrong with it. Now, in the real world, how many of you have ever walked into a restaurant and said, I want to order a particular kind of glass vessel? I'm in the mood for a glass vessel that looks like this. Do you have it? Can I see your glass menu? Oh, no, that one. Yeah, I want that. What should I put in it, sir? I don't care. Put whatever liquidy thing you want. I want that. Never done that. That's why writing to a paradigm is fool's gold. Because what a formula does is it says, it's a one-size-fit-all structure. Here's the 3 acts. Here's your first act. Here's your seventh and midpoint, page 17. This is what your glass looks like. So it's an off-the-shelf generic glass. And that actually is really comforting because I've got a structure. And it's got a beginning, middle, and it's going to look like a screenplay. It's going to smell like a screenplay. All I got to do is just put my wine into it, and I'm good to go. But in the real world, there's a reason why glasses are shaped different, for aesthetics and for functionality. So there's a reason champagne flutes are fluted, because it keeps effervescence the longest. Red wine is in a tulip-shaped glass for oxidation. Coffee mugs have a handle to keep your hands protected and keep. So if you write to a paradigm, i.e. formula, here's what happens. Your script reads like everyone else's. It feels generic, very predictable, and lifeless. And your characters are forced to do and say things to serve the plot. So all of a sudden, you have to prostitute your wine to fit this one-size-fit-all glass. And they'll be smart and they'll be articulate. And so at the end of the day, you have to make a decision. And I would ask you to not listen to what they say. And I would ask you not to listen to what I say. Okay? You don't know us. I have a workshop that I sell. Oh, fancy that. And this stuff, oh, you can learn this in my workshop. Fancy that. So you should not take everything I say as the gospel. And you shouldn't take anything they say as the gospel. You got to figure this out for yourself. Because if I'm right and they're wrong, and you follow what they do, but if they're right and I'm wrong, you shouldn't follow what I'm saying. So here's what I do with my classes. I go to my agency and I say, can I get the last 30 spec scripts that you sold that was an unknown writer? I don't care about Aaron Sorkin's script, an unknown writer, and last 30 pilots. And I give them to my class to read. They can't often leave, so we have to sort of, I can't put scripts, they have to be there physically. And we'll take a Saturday. And I go, just start reading scripts and pick any paradigm you want. And ask yourself how many of the scripts follow that paradigm. These are scripts that unknown writers use to break into business. And at the end of the day, people come up to me and they're usually really upset. And they're like, I got a question for you. I know what the question is going to be. And I'm like, what is it? Why have I spent the last 5 years torturing my script to follow this because I was told it, and none of these writers did? And the first answer is, that's a good question. That's the flip answer. The real answer is because you were scared into doing it. You were told you had to do it. You know, the people that teach paradigms, they have tools at their disposal. One of them is the fallacy of composition. So let me just, I don't have time to amass all of them, but I'll amass this one. So I'm going to start a seminar business, try to make money. I do market research, and I realize what people are most concerned about is the middle of the script. So I have some fancy name for my seminar, but what I'm going to teach you is what all successful scripts do in the middle, what you're not doing in the middle of your script, and it's why you don't have a career. And if you can do this one thing, you can probably have a career. And let's say I got some nice testimonials, which are not that hard to manufacture, and you come. And so I say, let's look at examples. So The Godfather, one of the most successful scripts of all time. Let's see the middle. And I show you a clip, and there's Michael with the guys, blah, blah, he throws the food, and bam, bam, bam. And I'm like, oh yeah, that was a great scene. All right, romantic comedy. When Harry Met Sally. And it's the faking the orgasm scene. Like, oh, that's a great scene. And he drops his corned beef sandwich. What are you doing? She did the orgasm thing? That's fine. All right. Let's do kind of more of a studio indie film. American Beauty. What? And that's the pass me the asparagus. He picked the asparagus. Oh, he throws the asparagus against the wall. And I go, there. You probably didn't notice it. That is what all successful scripts do in the middle. Readers will go and look for this in the middle of the script. They don't see it. You don't have a career. Like, what is it? What do you mean? You just saw it. It's the food propulsion scene. Don't laugh yet. Look, food represents survival. So in the middle of these movies, the character's saying, I'm willing to throw away my survival to go for my needs. I'm committed. That makes the reader engaged. Asparagus got thrown. Veal got thrown. A corned beef sandwich was dropped. That's close enough. Go to the middle of your script. I bet you look at every script you've written that hasn't succeeded in the marketplace, I'll bet you there's no food being thrown. How come people don't write movies about people on starvation journeys? You don't have a food propulsion scene. And I gotta tell you, I know everyone laughs, but I think it's just as funny to say in the middle of your script you have to have a false down moment because of what's up, or because of this movie, or because it's what's true for the few is not true for the many. And that's the fallacy of composition. It's the Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to the man behind the wizard, behind the curtain. This is the all-powerful paradigm. And they'll show you one or two examples, but that don't mean anything. So, it's taken me a long time to learn this. There can be no organic story structure without creative integration. Because organic comes from the intuitive, and story structure comes from the conceptual. And the problem is you have a lot of teachers out there who are teaching, most teachers are very conceptual. I taught formula. For 6 years, I taught my students formula. I knew formula was not how working writers work. I didn't use it. I didn't know anyone use it, but I taught my students formula. Because I thought it's training wheels. And I thought you got to learn the rules for you learn to break them. And I realized I was doing them a great disservice. Here's what happens when I work with professional writers. They understand there's 4 questions. If you want to have a career, there's 4 things you've got to get a reader to answer. Who, what, why, and why. Who, what, why, and why. Who's your main character or characters? What is it they're trying to accomplish? What opposes it? And why? Why does it matter? What's at stake? And then the other why no one talks about. And why should anyone give a shit? Why should anyone give a shit? Now, right now I'm going to give you a very practical reason, practical demonstration of why organic story structure is essential and why writing a paradigm is a waste of time. So let's look at the movie Babe. Who's the main character? Babe. He's a talking pig. And he has to win the National Sheep Herding Contest. And the reason he has to win the National Sheep Herding Contest is if he doesn't, he'll be eaten. Because non-essential farm animals get eaten. So it's about a talking pig who has to win the National Sheep Herding Contest or he'll be eaten. There's the who, what, and why. You want to get in the car? I don't. I'm Jewish. I'm not eating the pig. I don't care what happens to this pig. I'm not not interested. I don't get in that car. I know who, what, and why. I don't have enough context to care. I don't get engaged. Well, hold on. This pig, when we meet this pig, his mom is ripped away from him and slaughtered, and he's all alone, and he's an orphan. And he ends up on this farm, and there's no other pigs. You ever been like the outsider where like everyone has a clique and you don't? That's big. And he's so desperate for attention that he gets involved with a mischievous duck. He does something he shouldn't do, and now he's going to get eaten for it. And all he wants is to feel like he belongs. He just wants to have a friend. Just wants to have a connection. And so he's going to do this crazy thing that has no chance of winning, just to try to save his life. Now you'll get in the car, and I'm like, no. I mean, it's more interesting. I don't really want to watch that movie. Well, hold on. He partners with the farmers. Farmer's an older state guy, conservative, always colors within the lines, has no kids. The end of his life is closer than the beginning, and he wants to do something to prove that he existed. This is his Field of Dreams moment. And he's going to partner with Talking Pig to win the National Sheep Herding Contest. This is the ultimate odd couple. I'll watch that movie. So there's a point where you launch your movie, where I know what the story is, and you invite me into the car. And in Babe, that moment comes 68 pages in. Because it took 68 pages of context to get me invested. And the rest of it, page 56. In the Hurt Locker, page 11. I don't need as much. In True Grit, who, what, and why? Maddie is going to find Tom Chaney and have Tom Chaney die knowing because he killed her father. But it's going to be really impossible because she's a 14-year-old girl in the Wild West. And here's why. Tom Chaney shot her father down. Tom Chaney's a drunk. No one take him in. Her father did. Tom Chaney was drunk and committing violence. Her father tried to stop him. He's unarmed. Father's unarmed. Tom Chaney waited until her father shot him out. Shot him in the back, unarmed. Dropped him in the snow in front of his 14-year-old girl and just walked away, let him bleed out in front of his 14-year-old daughter. And no one will do anything about it but the 14-year-old girl. I'm in that car. And that movie launches on page 5. Now, when I work with professional writers, they're always asking me, do I have enough context to get the reader into the car? Or not enough? Am I launching my movie at the right point? When I work with amateurs, they never ask me that question. Why would they? They know the answer. Page 25. No, see, that was the moment when I realized I have to change as a teacher. That's the moment I realized teaching people as a formula as a sense of training wheels is misguided. That's the point where I realized, look, here's what you have to teach writers. A, how much context do you need or not need? The answer is different for every story. Secondly, how do you communicate context where it doesn't feel on the nose? How do you communicate context in a way where a reader can understand and absorb it and not feel like it's bad writing? Let me ask you a question. You don't know this, but in Tarzana, they have a warehouse full of every script that's ever failed. It's a massive warehouse. And it has all the scripts that failed. Let me ask you a question. What's your name? Jan. Jan gets a forklift, and he goes and he gets all of the scripts that failed in large part because they were so on the nose. Like, if you start reading, you're like, oh, characters don't talk that way. The writer's talking to me. This is a hack. And he piles all of these scripts over here. Raise your hand if you would think this is a sizable pile of scripts. Raise your hand. And Jan gets all the scripts where the movie that plays in the writer's head is more fascinating than the movie that plays in the reader's head. Where if you could experience what the writer did, you might get caught up in it. But the reader's not experiencing that. And we'll put all those scripts over here. How many of you think that's a significant pile of scripts? All right, here's the question. Which pile is bigger? We're going to vote. Who says that one? Raise your hand. Who says that one? Yes, that one. Now, what are most writers? Are writers concerned about being on the nose and being a hack? Raise your hand. Sure. And are they concerned about clarity and not in the movie that plays in the reader's head? Not as many. And what are most writers more worried about? Right. So more writers are worried about this, and more writers are failing because of that. So what I realize is what I have to teach writers is how much context do you need or not need? And how do you communicate your context in a way where it's not that pile, but it's not that pile? Because most writers, when they first set out, everyone's given all the information in context. Well, here's who I am. Well, I was raped as a kid. Oh, I was a rapist. Oh, really? And then, that's bad writing. So then they start writing with subtext, and it's more subtle. And they don't get these criticisms anymore. They're like, woo! But they're failing because of this, but they don't get those criticisms. That's why this pile is bigger. No one knows they're doing this. So what I've learned is I got to teach writers how do you know how much context you need in your story or don't? How do you communicate context in a way that's effective without the reader knowing you're doing it? That's why David Mamet and Neil Simon and many people said compelling conflict. And if you have a script where your launch point is early on, like Juno, or True Grit, or The Hangover, how do you hold a reader's attention over such an incredibly long build section? Or if you have The Fighter, or The Godfather, or In Bruges, or Babe, or King's Speech, where the launch point actually comes pretty late, so now you don't have to worry about holding their attention over a big section. How do you hold their attention over such a long setup section? And writing a formula doesn't teach you any of that. So first of all, I'm happy to email you a bunch of information about this in organic story structure. So if you have a phone and you want to email me, I'll have your email address. My email is Cory at corymendell.net, and also I'll pass this around. Put your name. Oh, so sorry, email. We're not done yet, but there's cards up here. So to summarize, the good news is writers' main complaint is access. I can't get the right people to read my script. How come nobody wants to read my script? And when you look at it from the people who can change your life's perspective, their main complaint is, where are all the new writers that can write both great characters and great story? And they're desperately looking for it. No offense to any of you, and you all might be the needles. But when you come to any kind of event like this, and the Great American Pitch Fest is the best of them, but from an industry perspective, if you talk to them and they're going to be candid with you, they're going to tell you we're looking for needles in haystacks. Because we know most people there are not, they might write pretty good scripts, they might write good scripts, but that ain't good enough. So we're looking for someone who could do this, and we know most people there can't. That's incredibly good news if you can do this. And the other good news that I'm offering you is if you can't do this, if you're in the 99% who can't, it's not about talent. It's about these skill sets. And in my film school class, there were 20 of us, and 3 of us went on to have careers. And one of the things we all had in common is we had mentors. I had a manager that taught me some of this stuff I was naturally strong at. Some of this I was naturally weak at. Some of it I was naturally weak at, and I didn't know I was weak at it. And that's what he did over the course of a year and a half. It's not what film school did, it's what he did. And almost every working writer that I know had someone in their life, a writer, the right teacher, a manager that did that for them. Because you don't naturally do this. So you guys might naturally be strong in all this. You guys might, right now, honestly, the only thing standing between you and a career is access. That is absolutely possible. And if so, you need to get on the tallest mountain, and you need to scream as loud as you can, and you need to get as many people reading your scripts as possible. Absolutely. And the cool thing is there's going to be a lot of events today that will give you really smart information on how do you stand on that mountain and scream the right message and get the right people. Access matters when you're at this level. If you're not at this level, you actually don't want access. You want to be flying under the radar. Because the industry is a fixed mindset industry, and they're looking for people who are just naturally great writers. So you only get one first impression. So the key is, if you're not at this level, what can you do to get to this level? And then when you're at this level, what do you do about it? And too many writers are focused on, I'm at this level, what do I do about it? And not, what level am I at? So once I changed my paradigm, and instead of saying, if you want to be a writer, just write, and here's the paradigm, and I said, forget the paradigm, that's not what professional writers do. If you're willing to make the investment and understand creative situation, and how to write a compelling conflict, and understand the process, you can train yourself to write to a place where, I don't want to name drop, but there's just so many people I worked with years ago who were pretty bad writers who are now having really nice careers. And this was the heart of it. A lot of really smart people helped me along the way. Nobody else out there is doing this kind of And so even if you don't do this, I just want you to understand that if you have a weakness when it comes to people really clearly understand the movie, or your characters aren't strong enough, or your stories are always falling apart in the middle, you can take shame out of the equation. Shame just makes it worse. There's nothing wrong with you. You just aren't naturally strong at a skill set. And you can learn that skill set. And you can improve on that skill set. And it can make a difference. And I think that is the best news anyone can give you, if you're willing to put the work. So my email is, I'm going to take questions in a second. My email is Cory at corymandell.net, CORYMANDELL.net. That's my website. I do workshops, 8-week workshops. I do them in Santa Monica, and I do them online using WebEx, virtual reality. So we can see and hear each other in real time. It's like a virtual room. I've got people literally all over the world. And what I do in those 8 weeks is give you a set of exercises and information. So at the end of the 8 weeks, you'll know, if you're more conceptual intuitive, you'll know your strengths, you'll know your weaknesses, and you'll know your blind spots, which are weaknesses you don't know you have. And at the end of the 8 weeks, you're not going to be writing combining conflict and have creative integration and nailing organic story structure. Unfortunately, I'm not one of these people that says, give me this money, spend 8 weeks with me, and I'll make you a professional writer. It's a journey. But at the end of the 8 weeks, you'll develop some of the skill sets, and others, you'll be stronger at them, but more importantly, you'll have exercises you can do at home tailored to you that can, if you keep working on them, you can develop these skill sets. So that's what I'm all about. And if you're interested, if you go on my website, I'll send you information. There's a sign-up list going around. And the next couple are sold out, but we're going to probably open a new one. Anyway, let me take questions. Are there any? First of all, thank you for your time and energy on a Saturday morning. Give me your name. What's your name?
Tammy.
I'm sorry. Yes, Cynthia. Tammy, what's your question?
Okay, I've listened to your teleconference on, and I followed your push. I thought it was brilliant.
Thank you.
And so I rewrote my script so that people will picture it. But what are the actions now? We have Rita Luzman from Larry, and he read my script, and I had this one location. I pictured the National Guard Armory on Mass Ave, and he pictured the Tustin hangar, which is even better.
Right, so here's the thing, is that I know you took in the telecom where I've talked about this, but you've never actually done the workshops and done the work. So the thing is, again, here's the thing. There are people that will say, come for this weekend or come for this and you'll get everything you need. Creative integration is a journey, and it can take some real time and energy. And so it's not for everyone. What you really want to do is write the best. If you have a version, you want to write this script and try to sell it, but you're not really looking to have a career, it's not worth it. It's an investment. But the great thing is everyone I know who's gone through this, at the end, their agents, their managers, their writing group, their spouses will say, no offense, I can't believe you wrote this script, because you don't write characters that great, or you don't write stories that great. I worked with a woman from USC. I met her. I script consult. I'm a consultant at Film Independent, and she's this really strong intuitive. And she has great wine, but she can't write a wine glass, and nobody can see the movie that plays in her head. And in film school, they said, yeah, you go write chick flicks. You can't write any, you just write real emotional chick flicks because you don't know structure, you never will. And she attacked this with a growth mindset. She got creative integration, and she went out and actually sold 2 action comedies. And she loved writing them. And people were like, you have some of the, you are amazing when it comes to structure. And she said, it's not that structure is more important than characters, but for your whole life you're told you're good at this and you'll always suck at that. And then suddenly have people say you're great at that after you work 13 months your ass off is really, really exciting. And then I'll work with other writers, and it's always character, and then they'll sell character-driven piece. In fact, I have a woman who just sold a pilot, and it was like a very offbeat character-driven pilot. And she's like, there's no way I could have written that pilot 2 years ago. Because I used to write from my head. I didn't know how to write from my heart and then integrate it. But it's a journey, and you can't just, I'm not saying you're going to walk out here and be able to do it. I mean, that'd be awesome. I would charge an obscene amount of money. It'd be good for me, but it'd be good for you.
Cory?
I mean, hold on. Even if it was like $10,000, $20,000, literally it'd be worth it if you could walk out here in 3 hours and be able to do this. Hold on, just to be fair, I want to get some more questions.
But you didn't answer my question.
Well, the question is, but you sort of prefaced it on that I'm doing this thing and someone's seeing something different. I'm like, yes, but at that point,
That was the question is, how do I know what are the signs that they are or are not seeing what they're seeing?
So you ask them a series of targeted questions. I'm sorry that I misunderstood your question. You ask them a series of targeted questions to see the movie that plays in their head, and does that line up the movie that plays in their head?
Because what I found was...
No, but I'm sorry, I've got to move on.
They're seeing things
Yes,
that are
what is
better than what...
That never, okay, so that's real quick. Writers will say like, when readers don't see what plays in your head, what if they see something more interesting? Well, you're in a world of hurt, you just don't know it. Because it's never going to end well. And I have this once where someone had this thing with a relationship, and someone's like, oh, she's a lesbian. And that's awesome. And they got really excited. But then through the whole script, they're like, how come she's not doing any lesbian stuff? Like, and then they're like, this writer's an idiot. And then I went back to the writer, and I'm like, yeah, well, they're disappointed because, you know, lesbian? There's no lesbian in this script, right? So even if they see something better, it never works out. Yes, what's your name?
Mark.
Hey, Mark.
Hi. That initial script you were talking about that the manager mentored you
Yeah.
and you fixed over 13 months.
Yeah.
How many of those things were wrong with it, and why was it so hard for you? You said it was torturous to do it.
Yeah.
Well, how many of those things were wrong, and why was it so hard for you to fix?
Great. I say there's 5% people who write compelling conflict, and then I said 95% can't. Well, I would take it really and say 5% can, 5% sort of can, and 90% can't. I wasn't at 5% that sort of could, so I had to learn to do that. But I was one of these guys that when I wrote something, and I was so insecure, it's like I saw the movie so vividly in my head, I just thought it's ready to go. And there was all this rewriting, and it had a lot of it, he just kept putting it under a microscope, and it was like all these little moments, and it was like, and at some point, like, we could just tear the script apart forever, let's just go out there, and he said, God is in the details, and that's what's gonna, here's the thing, when you go out to the marketplace, you can't control how people respond to your idea, but you can control the responding to execution, and if your script is tight, and it is just, everything in it is strong and singing, then no matter what, they have to respect you as a writer, and that's how you can get a career. And my script didn't sell, but it was a sample, and it got me a top agent at ICM. And the only reason I got in the room with Ridley Scott is because they read that script and wanted to meet me. And even over a beer, it would take me an hour. But basically, there were so many things I didn't know. And there were so many things I thought I knew that I was wrong. And it was just literally tearing my entire process down and rebuilding it through the script. I just went through this with someone, and he sold his pilot. And he said it was like going over the Himalayas, and it was so long, and I hated it. But the good news is the next time it's easier, and the next time it's easier. And the problem is, most writers, they do that with themselves in their head, and you can't evaluate and do this. Sorry, that's the best answer I can give you. Let's go to the back. Gentleman in the hat, what's your name?
My name is Tad.
Tad, hey Tad.
Hey, you talk about not going into the market and too early.
Yes.
How do you find out where you are without going into?
Well, first of all, there's a freeway and there's a cost way. So the freeway is if you give your script to 6 people who don't know what you're going for, and you ask them a series of targeted questions, you know, the movie that plays in their head, and they're not experiencing the movie that plays in your head, you're not ready. And it didn't cost you a dime. Now, if you don't want to do that, or you think you're getting the right feedback, hire some readers. Okay, I do script consultations. I charge a lot of money. Don't hire me. Don't hire any script consultant for that reason. Because they're just going to give you a singular opinion. I think my opinion is very valid. So do they. Go to the readers. Go to the gatekeepers. Script consultants are not gatekeepers. So don't hire me. Hire some readers and get, here's some money. Pretend the script came across your desk. Write the actual covers that you would write.
Script chart?
No, don't do that. Go to actual studio readers. These big marketed places, no. Go to get actual real human beings.
Hi, I'm Carolyn.
Hi, Carolyn.
Hi. I'm actually in the development phase.
Okay.
I'm not here to pitch. And you've said a lot of things. Thought I'd be upfront about that. You've given us a lot of things we should not be doing, including writing.
Right.
When we're
No, you should be writing. You should be writing.
Okay.
But what you should be doing is you should be writing every day. I'm sorry. But what I'm saying is write to your weaknesses, not your strengths.
Okay.
Don't write to product, write for process. So hold on, when I work with someone, they're more conceptual, they're going to do 2 months of pure intuitive writing. If they're intuitive, they're going to do 2 months of conceptual writing. So yeah, you're writing, but here, hold on, but what I'd say is, as Vince Lombardi said, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. So the key is most writers who work and write every day, they're writing things that aren't developing themselves.
Correct.
So no, you got to write all the time, is what you're writing.
I wanted to make sure I understood that.
Thank you.
Yeah, because when you said you don't act for your Juilliard and you shouldn't read these books because they're making money formulas, and I thought, okay, well, there's a lot of don't do. What should I?
What you should do is find out find someone who can help you identify what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are and what your blind spots are, and can help you systematically turn those weaknesses into strengths. And get you to the point where you can be writing scripts from both an intuitive and conceptual place, best characters, and you test your material, learn how to express that to other people, and then you come out the other end of development.
I liked your idea with the teaching with the 8 scripts given to people, telling somebody else wrote.
Yes, the only thing I'll warn you is suddenly I was at the Great American Fish Fest, and I heard you say this, and I went and I did it, and it was the biggest kick in the gut. It's hard, it's brutal, but it's important. You are?
Pat.
Hey, Pat.
I've been told by 8 other people that I'm good at story structure and plotting.
Yeah.
My dialogue needs to be fresher.
Sure.
Are there any tools to...
Yeah, intuitive training, intuitive integration. But here's the thing. There's 2 steps to this. So, like, there are people out there, and there's books out there that will teach you how to turn off your conceptual mind, like the artist's way, and work from a pure intuitive place. And that's a great first step. The challenge, though, is they don't teach you how to integrate. So what happens is people will do that, and then they'll come back and they'll look at what they wrote, and they'll say, this is terrible. Because they wrote it from an intuitive place, and they evaluated it from a conceptual place. So creative integration is learning how to create from a conceptual place and evaluate from a conceptual place. How to create from an intuitive place and evaluate from an intuitive place. That's the thing that's not taught. So it's creative integration. So yeah, there's books and seminars that are like, turn off the conscious mind. Some of them aren't so good, some of them are great. Improv is another great thing to do. But you have to learn the integration part. And that's the thing that isn't out there, as far as I can see. You are?
Ian.
Ian, hi Ian.
Hi, piggyback on her question. What are some of the questions you can ask when you get the 6 scripts out to your friends and your family?
Right. So if you guys email me, and I'm Cory at Cory@Mendell.net, I'll email you sort of a base list of questions. You always want to customize it for the script. I mean, there's an art to it, but I can give you a base of questions that you can sort of go from. You are?
Damien?
Hey, Damien.
Hi. When you said that readers have a database that keeps track of all these submissions, were you saying that script coverage services have the same?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't know. But I would imagine if you go to like the Script Sharks or whatever, I don't think that's part of this. I could be wrong, but my understanding is it's only within the industry.
And that's a literal database. You're not just talking metaphorically.
I'm not talking metaphorically. Someone came up to me last minute and said, I'm a California attorney, and you know that would be illegal? And they da-da-da, and I'm like, hey, I didn't do it. It just exists. It's nefarious. I'm like, and you know what? Go sue them. I'm on your side.
Hi, thanks.
Hi, I'm Margaret.
Hi, Margaret.
Firstly, brilliant. Thank you.
You know, I'm not going to disagree with that.
And secondly, I just want to ask, you recommended the book Mindset.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because it's about the difference between the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. And I wish someone gave me that book. It didn't exist. I wish someone gave me that book when I started out. I tell all my students in day one, you have a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, and you can control the ratio. The more fixed mindset you are, the less you'll get from this class, and the longer it's going to take you to get to your journey. The more growth mindset you are, the more you'll get out of this class. I've seen people who are terrible writers work with me, and 8 months later, this woman she got into the Sundance Screenwriters Lab, which is incredible. Her dialogue was terrible, and she had amazing. I worked with people who had written for years, nothing to show for it, and their scripts were like, eh. And a year later, the team of CA agents. I've seen transformation, and they are the most growth mindset people. And I work with some people, candidly, where they'll take like multiple classes from me, and they've made that much progress, I mean, honestly. And they're real fixed mindset people. So it's the most, I mean, It should be legally required if you want to be a writer that you read this book. That's how strongly I feel about it.
So what does it do? It teaches you to open your mind?
No, to change. Just read the book, because I'd rather let Carol Dweck answer these questions. She wrote the book. Yes.
Thanks, David.
Hey.
Just a quick question. The studio readers
Yeah.
you're talking about.
Yeah.
I know costly, obviously, but
Yeah.
what does that usually run?
When I did it, I don't know, $100, $150 maybe.
Okay, so we're not talking about it, right?
No. You like 3 writers, you ought to be out of there for $500, and I think that's the best $500. But you know what happens is like I have a lot of people come to me script consultations, and I'll do for them what Matt did for me, because they're so excited to go out there, and I'm like, yeah, and they're like, and I'm like, yeah, and I go hire some readers, and they're like, yeah, okay, and then I run into them, and I go, what happened? They go, oh yeah, the script went out, bombed. I actually had a friend who wouldn't even call me back. I mean, it's like it was just terrible. Like, what do the readers say? Nah, I didn't hire the readers. I'm like, why not? And they're like, I didn't want to lose confidence. And I thought I wanted to go out and feel good about it. I'm like, you know what? I laugh too but here's the thing, I was that guy. Like I was the manager. Like, look, I don't want to feel like the script is. I want to know what's good about the script before I go out, not what's bad about the script, because I have so insecure, fixed mindset. And it's like I just don't want to. It's like I'm going to go to a job interview and I don't care what I'm wearing. Whatever I'm wearing, I don't care. But the difference is you don't do that because it's not hard to change clothes.
Yeah.
I literally was standing out there, I had a different shirt. And someone said, oh, I want to take your class because you spilled coffee. Anyone has coffee on their shirt? And I ran out to my car and changed my shirt. So it took me about 20 seconds to do that. You can't change your writing process. And so most writers were like, well, here's what's fundamentally flawed. Here's what you don't have as a writer. They don't want to hear it. And most people come to me, most people who really are dedicated have been out there for 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 years with nothing to show for it. You get run over by that car enough times, you either quit or you get desperate enough to try something. And creative integration is really hard. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do as a writer. This is not an easy thing to do. You're rewiring your brain, but you'll come out the other end where now suddenly people are going, your dialogue is great. And you're like, F&A, man, F&A. All right, we are over time, I believe, so we have to go. So here's the thing. I will go outside, and I'm more than happy to keep answering questions. And if I'm around,